already happening. As Antonio Guterres says, it is happening now. And in fact, not a single place on Earth is not already affected by the climate crisis. But the good news is, we still have 7 years, 123 days, 22 hours, and 45 minutes to take action. Young people know this. We are not waiting until we are older to start taking action. Young people from all corners of the world, from the representatives and the countries that we have here, young people in India, young people in Japan, in Malawi, in Ecuador, in Indonesia, young people know this, and we are taking action. Now, for a minute, I know it might be difficult, dressed up inside a conference room, but take a moment to think back to when you were 12 years old. Do you remember when you were 12 years old? When I was 12, together with my 10-year-old sister, growing up here on the beautiful island of Bali, we decided to take action against plastic pollution. We had a clear vision to make our island of Bali plastic bag free. Almost a decade later, and here we are. Today, I'm 21 years old, and I have learned a lot. From 12 to 21, from a young, inspirational, so cute 12-year-old, to what I hope to be today, a confident young entrepreneur and role model for all of the up-and-coming, rising young people. Indonesia, talking about the country that we are in, has a population where nearly 30% is Gen Z. Now, to give you an idea, that's nearly 80 million of us below the age of 30 years old. What are we focusing on? What are we taking action on? What are we passionate about? Well, here are some examples. We heard previously that we need to take action, no more talking. What are some of those tangible actions that young people are doing? Well, we are working towards protecting 30% of the biodiversity by 2030. We are working to bring indigenous communities and indigenous voices into these conference rooms. We're focusing on trying to get more MPAs everywhere around the world, marine protected areas. We want to stop deforestation. We demand that no more new fossil fuel plants are being installed, and we are focusing on accelerating the solutions needed to achieve the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which mean we leave nobody behind. I mean, really, we know all of this. I believe that I am preaching to the crowd, preaching to the choir at the moment. All of us know this. We do not need more conferences, more speeches, more time, more research. The climate crisis is here and it's happening. I know it may be difficult to think about it while we're seated here inside with the air conditioning on, electricity on, but there's floods, there are forest fires, there is ice falling from the sky in places it should not. Climate change is here and it is happening now. It is already a reality for all of us. It means losing our homes. It means becoming climate refugees. It means more diseases, more pandemics if we do not take action now. Now going back to the youth and to the young people, today I'm 21, and believe it or not, most of the times and in the conferences I attend, I am now the older one. There are more young people getting involved at the front lines at a younger and younger age. It almost feels like every 10-year-old, 12-year-old that I speak to today has an idea, has a vision for a better world, and are leading by example. Young people are more than an inspiration only. We are here for more than just a photo opportunity or a standing ovation. We are serious about change. So my challenge to all of the countries here, invite young people to the tables of decision making. Ask what the solutions they have in mind. Ask them to get involved from the beginning all the way through to the end. Us kids may only be 25% of the world's population, but we are 100% of the future. Remember, we have 7 years, 123 days, 22 hours, and by now, 40 minutes to take action to reverse the climate crisis. We are ready. Are you? Thank you.
Sebagaimana diketahui, sidang IPU memiliki tradisi gender inklusif dengan memastikan partisipasi anggota parlemen perempuan dan laki-laki. Namun, saya sangat menyayangkan ketidakhadiran Ibu Lesia Vasilenko, Presiden dari Bureau of Women Parliamentarian, yang tidak dapat menghadiri sidang ini karena situasi krisis di Ukraina. Saya ingin menyampaikan solidaritas kita semua kepada rakyat Ukraina dan menyerukan penyelesaian damai terhadap konflik yang sedang terjadi. Semoga pertumpahan darah dan kerusakan yang lebih lanjut dapat diberhentikan. Selanjutnya, untuk mewakili Bureau of Women Parliamentarian, saya mengundang Ibu Ramzi Fayez dari Bahrain ke podium. Ibu Ramzi Fayez, dipersilahkan.
Honorable Madam Speaker, Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General, Madam President of the Forum of Young Parliamentarians, distinguished guests, dear colleagues. I am honored to address the Assembly today as the first Vice President of the IPU Bureau of Women Parliamentarians. I am proud to join this opening of the general debate to replace the President of the Forum, Ms. Lesia Vasilenko of Ukraine, as she defends her country and her people. Today's theme of the general debate on mobilizing parliaments to act on climate change is one that is of great value to women and girls everywhere. Climate change is one of the greatest threats to our societies. Due to human emissions of greenhouse gases, we are on a warming tragedy that is changing how we live. The foundations of our societies, including food, security, health, economy, and infrastructure, will be in jeopardy. Furthermore, the most immediate impact will be on already vulnerable and marginalized populations. With this in mind, let me turn to concrete solutions. First, we must enact proactive measures to increase women's political participation if we are to advance in climate action. Indeed, we know that there is a strong positive correlation between the percentage of seats occupied by women in national parliaments and the prioritization of climate change policy associated with lower CO2 emissions. Research indicates that greater representation of women in national parliaments lead countries to adopt more effective climate change policies. However, there is a disproportionate lack of representation of women in national and global policy spaces. IPU data shows that as of January 2022, only 26.1% of parliamentarians around the world were women. While that figure represents a historic high, it is still far from gender parity. At the current rate, it will still take us 40 years to achieve it. Second, we must advance on gender-responsive climate legislation and policy reform. Climate-related policies and other social policies, including for gender equality, complement one another. The two goals work together, and no climate agenda can succeed without going hand in hand with the gender equality agenda. Third, we need green and gender-responsive institutions. This change must start from our parliaments. New initiatives to make parliaments more environmentally friendly institutions are slowly taking root in different parts of the world. Many parliaments are going green by reducing their environmental footprint, lowering their greenhouse gas emissions, and improving the overall sustainability of their activities. These must go together with our efforts toward gender-sensitive parliaments as well. In moving towards an inclusive green economy, parliaments must take into account gender and other socially differentiated needs. Colleagues, we must increase our actions, not just for our family future, but for future of our children. We know that we are stronger when we work together as members of parliaments across regions. May our deliberations today bring us closer to our goals in climate response and gender equality. Thank you for your attention, and I wish us all very fruitful deliberations.
Thank you. Kembali lagi pada tradisi, IPU juga memastikan partisipasi anggota parlemen muda. Oleh karena itu, saya mengundang Presiden Forum of Young Parliamentarians, Sahar Al-Bazar dari Mesir, untuk menyampaikan pidato pengantar dari debat umum ini. Kepada Sahar Al-Bazar, dipersilahkan.
Honorable Madam Speaker, Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General, Madam Vice President of Bureau of Women, distinguished guests, dear colleagues. I am very pleased to address you as the President of the Forum of Young MPs. I am also speaking on behalf of the youth and future generations. At the IPU assemblies, we always debate important issues. However, in the minds of young people, climate change is one key issue that defines our time. The next 10 years will determine our world for centuries. The degradation of our environment happened before us youth being born. Yet it is us who will have to suffer the effects, and it is us who will work on repairing the damage. Therefore, we simply have to have a say in the climate action. Exclusion is not only unjust, but it's also not wise, because it will be waste of talents and fresh ideas of the most educated generation in the history. Young people all over are watching how politicians are tackling the climate emergency, and very often they are not satisfied. We can see it in Greta Thunberg of our today. We see it in the movement of Fridays of Future. We see it in millions marching, demanding for actions. Their voices and their solutions need to have a place in our parliaments. This is where young MPs come in. As young people, we are ideally placed in parliaments to bridge the views of youth into parliaments. However, with less than 3% of young MPs under 30, we and the voices we represent are greatly underrepresented. So what can we do? Yes, we must urgently prioritize action to implement Paris Agreement, and to get there, we need more youth participation. We need more young MPs in the parliament. We need to include youth, civil society in parliamentary processes, and we need MPs from all ages to listen to the youth and speak on their behalf. There is only one way, easy enough to do right now, is to sign up for the campaign I Say Yes to Youth in Parliaments. You can sign up in our booth, and you can sign up online. Finally, I am pleased to say that my home country, Egypt, is prioritizing youth inclusion in the lead-up process to COP27 conference in Sharm el-Sheikh. The first event will be in May, which is the IPU Global Conference of Young MPs, which will be dedicated to climate action. I hope you all send your delegations of young MPs. In September, Egypt will host with UNFCCC Conference of Youth. Both events will feed the youth perspective to the climate change in COP27 conference in November. This is a great example of youth inclusion in important political processes. Ladies and gentlemen, in this defining moment, we cannot exclude anyone from solving the climate crisis, especially youth. Let's work together. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Saya sampaikan terima kasih kepada semua delegasi yang telah menyampaikan pidato pengantar general debat, dan sebelum special guest diarahkan untuk meninggalkan podium, kami persilahkan kepada seluruh special guest untuk bisa berfoto bersama di atas podium. Tolong kamera untuk maju ke depan. We will take a picture first before the special guest leave the podium. Kita akan lanjutkan. Sebagaimana diketahui, item 2 agenda Assembly ini adalah consideration of request for the inclusion of an emergency item in the Assembly agenda. Saya ingin mengingatkan kepada semua delegasi bahwa batas waktu untuk mengajukan emergency item adalah pukul 17 WITA hari ini. Izinkan saya untuk selanjutnya menyampaikan beberapa hal terkait tata tertib persidangan atau tata tertib sidang. Pertama-tama, sesuai tradisi, urutan pembicara pada general debate akan dimulai dengan segmen untuk ketua parlemen. Kami merasa sangat terhormat menyaksikan kehadiran dari begitu banyak delegasi dari seluruh dunia pada IPU Assembly ini. Saya ingin menyampaikan bahwa tata tertib telah diikuti dan bahwa urutan pembicara, baik untuk pemimpin parlemen maupun pembicara kedua dan selanjutnya telah ditentukan dengan cara diundi. Daftar urutan pembicara telah didistribusikan untuk semua delegasi di ruang sidang ini. Kedua, melihat tingginya kehadiran delegasi pada sidang ini, maka steering committee pagi ini telah memutuskan untuk memberikan waktu berbicara sepanjang total 6 menit untuk setiap delegasi parlemen dan 7 menit untuk delegasi yang dipimpin oleh ketua parlemen. anggota parlemen muda yang telah mendaftarkan diri untuk mengikuti debat umum akan diberikan tambahan waktu 2 menit. Permanent observer akan diberikan waktu berbicara maksimal 3 menit. Saya meminta kepada semua delegasi untuk memperhatikan alokasi waktu ini saat menyampaikan pidatonya. Terkait dengan protokol kesehatan COVID-19, demi kesehatan kita semua, masker wajib dikenakan setiap saat ketika delegasi sedang berada di tempat duduknya. Saya juga ingin menyampaikan, mengingat masih ada delegasi yang belum mendaftar untuk berbicara, maka pendaftaran pembicara masih dibuka hingga besok Selasa 22 Maret tepat pada pukul 12 siang. Saya juga ingin mengingatkan para delegasi bahwa delegasi berhak mengusulkan salah satu anggotanya selaku Vice President of the Assembly. Saya mengundang semua delegasi yang belum memberikan usulan untuk menyampaikan nama kandidat mereka kepada Sekretariat IPU. Merupakan suatu kehormatan bagi saya untuk memimpin sidang ini bersama-sama dengan para Vice Presidents selama berlangsungnya sesi General Debate beberapa hari ke depan. Terakhir, kepada delegasi yang terhormat, saya ingin menyampaikan bahwa dalam rangka mendukung kegiatan sidang, di kedua sisi panggung terdapat 2 petugas yang akan dengan senang hati membantu menyampaikan pesan-pesan Anda kepada saya atau kepada sekretariat. Di hadapan Anda telah tersedia daftar urutan nama-nama yang sejauh ini telah mendaftar untuk menyampaikan pidato di General Debate. Akhir kata, saya ingin meminta sekali lagi kepada semua delegasi untuk memperhatikan waktu berbicara yang dialokasikan. Hal ini agar semua delegasi yang sudah mendaftar mendapatkan kesempatan dan kita bisa menyelesaikan General Debate sesuai dengan jadwal yang sudah ditetapkan. Selaku pembicara pertama adalah PH Kacavivi, delegasi from Namibia. Selanjutnya diikuti oleh BS Park, Republic of Korea. Dan selanjutnya adalah Ertalbi El Alami, delegasi from Maroko. Waktu dan tempat kami persilahkan. Wait. The microphone is off. Please, technician.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
You can start.
Madam President, President of IPU, Secretary General of IPU, fellow parliamentarians, ladies and gentlemen,
Okay, so
allow me on behalf of the Namibian Parliament to thank the government and the Parliament of Indonesia for the warm welcome extended to our dedication. Today, the 21st of March, is our Independence Day. We celebrate 32 years since the attainment of our freedom and independence. Madam President, the theme of this assembly is topical and relevant to parliaments across the world. I would like to take this opportunity to share the experience of Namibia on this very important topic, as well as the efforts to address climate change that are being driven by the government and the two houses of the Namibian parliaments, both of which are represented at this auspicious occasion. Furthermore, Madam President, we have committed ourselves as Parliament to the inclusivity of the youth and children's voices in these endeavors. Therefore, I have the pleasure to inform you that today, as part of our delegation, we have two members of the Namibian Children's Parliament. Namibia is a hot and dry land, and the fact that we have a small population spread across the vast area of our land shows the challenges of human settlement in our country. Namibia does not contribute significant amounts of greenhouse gases to global emissions. However, our population is negatively impacted by the emissions of other countries. We have already started the experience of the impact of climate change with a long period of drought that lasted 5 to 7 years in most regions of our country, and increased flooding in some areas of our country this year as the drought ended. At the current rate of climate change, it is estimated that the human annual temperatures in Namibia will increase further by 2.7 degrees Celsius in the next 2 decades, and that annual rainfall is likely to decrease. The impact of climate change in Namibia is mostly felt in the agricultural sector. Namibia exports beef to Europe, Asia, and later to the United States of America. Livestock production is a major income generator in the agriculture sector. However, it is threatened by climate change, and in the most recent drought, reduced livestock number considerably. The majority of Namibians rely heavily on the rain-fed agriculture and livestock production, and are thus extremely vulnerable to climate change. It negatively impacts food security and affects the most vulnerable population of our country, especially women and children. In Namibia, especially in our rural communities, women play a very vital role in securing food and income through food harvesting activities. Madam President, I would like to emphasize the need for countries to work in partnership with each other towards developing strategies that reduce vulnerability to climate change and improve adaptive capacities. Our policies need to ensure the participation of women and children and other vulnerable groups, and offer training and appropriate local knowledge for adaptation. Namibia has developed a national climate policy, which is a legal framework meant to address climate change, vulnerable population, and Namibia's adaptive capacity. This policy is regularly reviewed in terms of its implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of climate change mitigation strategies. Madam President, the Namibian President, His Excellency Dr. Hage Geingob, recently introduced the Green Hydrogen Initiative, being undertaken in partnership with other countries. These initiatives aimed to transform our economy and tap into abundant resources that have a great potential for producing renewable energy. It is also reiterates our commitment to tackling the impact of climate change. The Namibian Parliament reassures you of its commitment to give this subject the necessary attention to address the negative effects of climate change and its devastating impacts. That said and done, thank you very much for your attention. Terima kasih. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. B.S. Park from Republic of Korea, you have the floor. Followed by Mr. Ertalbi El Alami from Morocco.
존경하는 각국 대표단 여러분, 대한민국 국회의장 박병석입니다. 먼저 코로나19 팬데믹의 어려운 여건 속에서 전 세계 의회가 함께하는 자리를 마련해 주신 IPU와 인도네시아의 푸안 의장님께 감사의 말씀드립니다. 지상낙원이라고 불리는 이곳 발리는 지구가 얼마나 아름다운 행성인지를 새삼 일깨워줍니다. 그런 지구가 신음하고 있습니다. 동토의 시베리아에 폭염이 닫히고 열사의 사막에 눈보라가 몰아칩니다. 폭우와 폭설, 폭소와 혹한이 때와 장소를 가리지 않고 세계를 위협하고 있습니다. 한국은 최근 발생한 산불로 산림 지역이 큰 피해를 입었습니다. 다행히 세계는 2015년 파리 협정을 맺어 소중한 행성 지구를 지키기로 다짐했습니다. 2022년 현재 138개 국가가 탄소 중립을 선언하였습니다. 문제는 실천입니다. 오늘 행동하지 않으면 내일의 지구는 없습니다. 존경하는 대표단 여러분, 우리 의회가 지구촌 탄소 배출 제로 운동에 앞장서야 합니다. 각국 의회 대표단에 몇 가지 제안을 드리며 아울러 대한민국 국회의 탄소 배출 감축 노력도 함께 소개하도록 하겠습니다. 첫째, 실행의 선도자가 됩시다. 기후위기는 지구인의 일이 아닌 오늘을 위협하고 있습니다. 정부와 의회가 온실가스 감축 목표를 설정하고 이행하는 일을 의지를 갖고 실천합시다. 2020년 대한민국 국회는 탄소 배출 제로 달성을 위한 전 세계적 노력에 동참하기 위해 기후위기 비상대응 촉구 결의안을 의결하였습니다. 지난해 대한민국 국회는 탄소 중립 비전과 이행 체계를 법제화한 기후위기 대응을 위한 탄소 중립 녹색 성장 기본법을 제정하였습니다. 이를 바탕으로 대한민국 정부는 같은 해 11월 제26차 유엔 기후변화협약 당사국 총회에서 국가 온실 감축 목표를 상향 조정하였습니다. 2030년까지 2018년 대비 40% 감축하는 목표를 세웠는데 이는 종전 목표보다 약 14%포인트가 상향된 수치입니다. 대한민국 국회 스스로도 2030년까지 친환경 국회를 만들 계획입니다. 디지털화를 가속해 종이 없는 국회를 만들 것입니다. 청산의 공용 차량을 친환경 차량으로 바꾸고 있습니다. 친환경 고효율 제품 사용을 확대하고 있는 것입니다. 둘째, 정의로운 전환의 수호자가 됩시다. 기후위기는 약자를 먼저 공격합니다. 의회가 나서서 탄소 중립 사회로의 전환 과정에서 취약계층이 희생되지 않도록 수호하는 역할을 하십시다. 대한민국 국회는 친환경 녹색 경제로의 이행 과정에서 발생하는 부담을 사회적으로 함께 나누는 정의로운 전환을 기후위기 대응의 기본 원칙으로 설정하였습니다. 대한민국 국회는 정부로 하여금 취약계층에 대한 사회적 안전망을 마련하고 취약 지역을 특별지구로 지정해 지원하고 있습니다. 탄소 중립 사회로의 이행 과정에서 발생하는 경제적, 환경적, 사회적 불평등을 해소하기 위해 노력하고 있는 것입니다. 셋째, 녹색 산업의 촉진자가 됩시다. 탈탄소 경제로 이동은 신기술과 신산업을 필수로 합니다. 친환경 녹색 산업의 전환한 기업들이 신기술과 신산업을 통해 새로운 도약을 할 수 있도록 의회가 촉진자 역할을 해야 합니다. 대한민국 국회는 정부와의 협력 아래 기업이 친환경 저탄소 시스템을 도입하는 과정에서 첨단 산업으로 진출할 수 있는 그린 뉴딜 정책의 기반을 마련하였습니다. 대한민국 국회는 에너지 전환과 녹색 산업 육성 등 그린 뉴딜 정책을 지원하기 위한 법과 제도를 정비 중에 있습니다. 기후위기 대응기금을 설치하여 탄소 중립 사회로의 이행과 녹색 성장 촉진을 위해 필요한 재원을 확보하고 있습니다. 존경하는 각국 의회 대표단 여러분, 경제가 어렵거나 정치와 안보가 불안정하면 환경은 뒷전으로 밀릴 수 있습니다. 그러나 기후위기를 해결하지 못하면 경제는 물론 정치와 안보도 안정을 기할 수 없습니다. 네, 우리가 정의로운 전환 그리고 의회가 정부와 함께 앞장서서 이제 더 이상 뒤로 미루지 말고 당장 실천해야 합니다. 지금 바로 이 자리에서 실천을 다짐하십시다. 감사합니다.
Mr. Ertalbi El Alami from Morocco, you have the floor, followed by GFN Mudenda from Zimbabwe.
السيدة الرئيس، الزميلات والزملاء، السيدات والسادة، يشرفني أن أتدخل باسم برلمان المملكة المغربية في هذه الدورة التي أحسن اتحادنا باختيار موضوع تعبئة البرلمانات من أجل مواجهة التغيرات المناخية ليكون محورها الأساس إدراكا منه للمخاطر المحدقة بالبشرية ومستقبل الأرض وللمسؤولية الملقاة على عاتق البرلمانات في درء هذه المخاطر وقلب المعادلات السلبية المسجلة في مجال الاختلالات المناخية. وأود باسم الشعبة المغربية في الاتحاد أن أتوجه بالشكر وبالتهنئة لبرلمان الشقيقة أندونيسيا وسلطاتها على ما أحاطوا به هذه الدورة من عناية وما وفروه لها من أسباب النجاح. ويسرني أن أجدد التأكيد على التزام المملكة المغربية بقيادة صاحب الجلالة الملك محمد السادس أعزه الله من أجل البيئة وتنفيذ التزاماتها في إطار مؤتمر الأطراف في اتفاقية الأمم المتحدة للتغيرات المناخية، مما جعل بلادي موضوع ثقة المجتمع الدولي بانتخابها في مطلع مارس الجاري في نيروبي رئيسا للدورة السادسة لجمعية الأمم المتحدة للبيئة لولاية مدتها 2 سنين بعد أن احتضنت مراكش في نوفمبر 2016 الدورة 22 لقمة مؤتمر الأطراف في اتفاقية الأمم المتحدة التي توجت بتدابير عملية لفائدة كوكبنا، وكانت بامتياز قمة إطلاق فكرة ومبادرات العدالة المناخية لإفريقيا. وقد كانت المملكة المغربية سباقة واستباقية في إعمال التدابير الضرورية لحماية البيئة وخفض نسبة الانبعاثات المسببة لارتفاع حرارة الأرض، إذ إن البيئة تشكل سياسة عامة يؤطرها الدستور وتنفذ في إطار سياسات عمومية متعددة، وتشكل مكونا التقائيا في مختلف السياسات الأخرى. وإن الوقت لا يسمح باستعراض مجمل هذه السياسات، فإنه لا بد من التذكير ببعض عناوينها وعلاماتها البارزة، ومنها: أولاً، سياسة المملكة الطموحة في مجال إنتاج الطاقة من مصادر متجددة، الشمسية والريحية والبحرية والمائية. ثانياً، السياسة الفلاحية التي تساهم في الحفاظ على البيئة وتوفير الغذاء للمغاربة وتمون العديد من الأسواق العالمية. ثالثاً، التحكم في أنشطة الصيد البحري وإخضاعها لرقابة صارمة والحفاظ على وتيرة تجدد الثروات السمكية. رابعاً، نهج سياسة مائية طموحة متأصلة في مجال تعبئة المياه العذبة وحسن استعمالها في النشاط الفلاحي والصناعي. خامساً، حظر صناعة البلاستيك غير قابل للتحلل والضار بالبيئة وتعويضها بصناعات صديقة للبيئة وإيكولوجية. سادساً، إلزام الجميع بأخذ البعد البيئي بعين الاعتبار في كل المشاريع الاستثمارية، وعدم الترخيص لأي مشروع ما لم تكن وثائقه مرفقة بدراسة حول أثره على البيئة وتثبت احترامه للمعايير الإيكولوجية. سابعاً، تسريع إنشاء محطات إنتاج الطاقة من مصادر متجددة، وخاصة الشمسية، حيث تعتبر محطة ورزازات نور من أكبر المحطات العالمية القليلة في العالم لإنتاج الطاقة النظيفة، وتعميم هذا النموذج على مختلف جهات المملكة بما في ذلك مدن الأقاليم الجنوبية نور العيون ونور بجدور والدخلة، التي ستعرف ميلاد مشروع ضخم لإنتاج الطاقة الريحية كلفته حوالي 3 ملايير دولار، والذي سيعتمد آخر التكنولوجيات الحديثة، علما بأن 28 مدينة مغربية من طنجة إلى القويرة بها اليوم مشاريع منتجة للطاقة من مصادر متجددة. وبهذه المشاريع وغيرها المبرمجة، ومع تحرير قطاع إنتاج الطاقة وفتح المجال أمام الإنتاج الذاتي، فإن بلادي اليوم من البلدان الرائدة في العالم في إنتاج الطاقة النظيفة. وفي إطار عقيدة سياستها الخارجية المبنية على التضامن، تحرص المملكة على تقاسم خبراتها وسياساتها مع باقي البلدان الإفريقية الشقيقة من خلال مشاريع رائدة من قبيل مبادرة ملائمة الفلاحة الإفريقية المعروفة بإنيشيتيف 3A's، التي تم إطلاقها من طرف صاحب الجلالة الملك محمد السادس خلال قمة المناخ بمراكش سنة 2016، برهان خفض هشاشة إفريقيا وفلاحتها إزاء الاختلالات المناخية والنهوض بمشاريع فلاحية في عدد من بلدان القارة، وبالتالي المساهمة في درء الفقر. وعلاقة بمعاناة إفريقيا جراء الاختلالات المناخية، وهي التي لا تتسبب سوى في انبعاث 4% من الغازات المسببة للاحتباس الحراري، نجدد نداءنا لإقامة شراكات منتجة من أجل التصدي لمخاطر الاختلالات المناخية على مواطنات ومواطني إفريقيا، شراكات تخرج عن الفهم التقليدي الضيق للدعم أو التعاون من أجل التنمية، ما دامت القارة تتوفر على إمكانيات هائلة بشرية وطبيعية لإنتاج الثروات. 60% من الأراضي القابلة للزراعة في العالم توجد في إفريقيا. السيدة الرئيسة، الزميلات والزملاء، نتساءل كمشرعين عما الذي يعرقل تنفيذ الاتفاقيات المبرمة في مجال حماية البيئة، وتتعدد الأجوبة عن هذا السؤال، إلا أن الجوهري من هذه العراقيل يكمن في ضعف التزام الحكومات والهيئات المانحة بما يتفق عليه، وضعف التمويلات المتعهد بها لتمويل السياسات وتدابير بديلة لتلك المسببة لانبعاثات الغازات الدفيئة، وضعف انخراط الدول المانحة من أجل الاقتصاد الأخضر والمستدام، وضعف تقاسم التكنولوجيات النظيفة وارتفاع أسعارها، وما التخلف عن الوفاء بالالتزامات إزاء الصندوق الأخضر من أجل المناخ المفروض تموينه ب100 مليار دولار سنويا سوى أحد علامات ضعف هذه الالتزامات. وما من شك في أن جائحة كوفيد-19 كانت امتحانا عالميا ساءل مفهوم التضامن الدولي. وإذا كانت فترة الجائحة غنية بالدروس التي ينبغي أن نوظفها لجهة تطوير وتوظيف التكنولوجيا الإعلام والاتصال والمعرفة في الاقتصاد والخدمات المستدامة، فإن ذلك يحتاج دائما إلى التخلي عن الأنانيات والتحلي بروح التضامن الفعلي وتقاسم المهارات والمعارف. وإذا كنا في مركب واحد نواجه المخاطر البيئية نفسها، فإن بلدان الجنوب تعاني أكثر من غيرها من انعكاسات الاختلالات المناخية، وتعتبر قارتنا الإفريقية الحلقة الأضعف في هذه المعاناة، إذ يتجسد ذلك في ظواهر الجفاف والتصحر وتدهور الغطاء الغابوي والنباتي والنزوح والهجرات جراء العوامل المناخية. وتعد النساء والأطفال وذوي الاحتياجات الخاصة والمزارعون الصغار الفئات الأكثر تضرراً من التقلبات المناخية. إنها أوضاع تسائل الإرادة السياسية الدولية وتمتحن القيم التي من المفترض أن نتقاسمها، وتسائل بالأساس حس المسؤولية لدينا جميعاً. شكراً على حسن الإصغاء.
Thank you. Next, Mr. GFN Mudenda from Zimbabwe, and then followed Ms. Gotani from Malawi.
Madam President of the Assembly and our gracious Speaker of the Parliament of Indonesia, our Secretary General, dear colleagues, it is instructive that the phenomenon of climate change has intensified globally, progressing at a much faster rate than initially projected by scientists. Climate-induced calamities are on the increase, as witnessed by unprecedented weather patterns and catastrophic droughts, as well as devastating cyclones. To that end, Madam President, our responses as parliaments should be intensified by enacting appropriate legislation for mitigatory measures. Heads of state and government are urged to assiduously increase their national determined contributions, ambitions, and climate actions towards securing net zero emissions. In so doing, Madam President, they would keep the 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature rise threshold within reach. To this end, parliaments should use their constitutional mandates to ensure that governments meet their mitigatory targets unequivocally through robust oversight on the executive. Accordingly, some of the best practices that parliaments can adopt in greenhouse gas emission reduction towards the net zero agenda include legislating towards incentivizing green infrastructure project implementation, better waste management methodologies, and circular economy. In addition, Madam President, mainstreaming of climate change-related legislation in order to expedite the transition to clean and renewable energy development is necessary. Madam President, parliaments must ensure that the Paris Agreement its subsequent Katowice roadmap and the renewed commitments at the Glasgow 26th Conference of Parties 2021 are entirely implemented by all the parties. Furthermore, it is critical that developed countries should honor their 100 billion pledge towards mitigatory measures. To this end, oversight on all mitigation projects and budget allocations must be effectively implemented by parliaments. Similarly, Zimbabwe launched its National Climate Fund in 2021, primarily to give climate action direction and sustainability. For robust oversight, it is an imperative that IPU member parliaments forge strategic partnerships which will enhance the understanding by parliamentarians of climate change discourse multilaterally. Madam President, Zimbabwe's response measures to climate change are guided by the principles of common but differentiated responsibilities, respective capabilities, and climate justice. In this respect, Zimbabwe has raised its commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from 33% to 40% per capita by 2030 in its 2021 national determined contributions, as guided by the implementation of the Low Emission Development Strategy. This has been bolstered by Zimbabwe's mainstreaming of the climate change phenomenon into its National Development Strategy 2021 to 2025. Additionally, Zimbabwe is crafting a comprehensive climate change bill whose focus is climate financing, measurement of greenhouse gas emissions, compliance and reporting, as well as verification matrix. May I conclude, Madam President, by saluting the Indonesian Parliament for the hospitable hosting of the 144th Assembly of the IPU and related meetings on this majestic Bali Island. Congratulations, I so submit, Madam President.
Thank you. Next is Ms. Gotani from Malawi, followed by Mr. Nadir from Guyana. And is the last person before we take a break for the lunch. Please be prepared, Mr. Nadir from Guyana.
Your Honor, the President of the 144th General Assembly of the Inter-Parliamentary Union, who is also the Speaker of the House of Representatives of the Republic of Indonesia, Dr. Maharan, the President of the IPU, the Secretary General, my fellow speakers, members of Parliament, leaders of delegation, international observers, ladies and gentlemen. Before I start my speech, my condolences to the Parliament of Uganda for losing Speaker Jacob Olunyana. Our condolences to the people of Uganda. Ladies and gentlemen, I am greatly honored to stand before this honorable assembly, which is meeting in this beautiful city in Indonesia, to contribute from a Malawi's perspective to the topic, getting to zero mobilizing Parliament to act on climate change. Madam President, it is now abundantly clear for everyone to see and appreciate the fact that almost all countries on earth are facing and are having to deal with significant consequences of climate change. The challenges of climate change are felt even more in the world's poorest countries, partly because of their low adaptive capacities. Countries in sub-Saharan Africa, where Malawi belongs, are cases in point. Madam President, as a Member of Parliament, I stand here with total conviction that we parliamentarians hold the key when it comes to climate change issues, because we are well positioned through our legislative, representative, as well as oversight mandate to influence greatly the fight against climate change. Madam President, due to climate change, Malawi has experienced and is experiencing right now, it is reeling under the devastating effects of the various cyclones such as Cyclone Idai, Cyclone Ana, last month and a few days ago, Cyclone Gombe, have added a lot of suffering to the poor and vulnerable in Malawi. Madam President, a lot of lives have been lost, infrastructure completely destroyed, sources of income for the poor have been grossly affected. In short, the social and economic fabric which we use to enjoy as a developing country has been grossly affected as a result of climate change. Madam President, as we speak, there are fears once again that yet another cyclone is developing which may affect Malawi and pour more miseries in addition to the current challenges. Madam President, Malawi is currently at the mercy of ongoing dangerous tropical cyclones which I have mentioned. As a country, we have never experienced these terrible events before, but unfortunately, there's no end in sight to these natural disasters in the near future. And Malawi continues to suffer the consequences of some of these world's worst natural disasters occasioned by climate change. Madam President, as I said, the sad part of it is that these disasters are still continuing rendering much of our population destitute. As we debate this very important topic, I wish to put on record that much of our infrastructure has been destroyed in most parts of the country. This, Madam President, has brought more misery to our vulnerable citizens. Madam President, I am sure you appreciate the magnitude of the challenges which Malawi is suffering, coming as it were hard on the heels of devastating COVID-19 pandemic, which has also had and continues to have a major impact on our economy. Madam President, the climate challenges have had a knock-on effect on our country when we take into account the fact that Malawi is a very poor country ranked on 163 on the Development Index. What this means, Madam President, is that much as our government is trying all it can to deal with this and assist the suffering people, particularly women and children, Malawi does not have the enormous resource to cope up with these challenges. Madam President, as Parliament of Malawi, we have tried our best and continue to do so to provide leadership and allocate resources within our constitutional mandate towards mitigating the suffering that has been caused by natural disasters. Through our role in considering and approving the national budget, Parliament of Malawi has been in the forefront in ensuring that government allocates enough resources in various ministries and government departments that deal with natural disasters to continue to lead in coming up with workable policies and actions to mitigate climate challenges, issues, and the suffering of our citizens. Madam President, one of the functions of legislation, I believe, is to effectively deal with climate change. Each country needs effective legislation which takes a cue from the global approach to global policies, treaties, or protocols on climate change, which as parliamentarians, we need to harness and come up with legislation where need be. Even at national level, Madam President, it is imperative that legislatures as legislatures to ensure that existing laws are in tandem with a new dispensation that is being influenced heavily by climate change. I am glad to report here that Parliament of Malawi is currently considering various pieces of legislation aiming at improving land use, forest and water conservations, with the hope that cumulatively Malawi will significantly contribute to the global action on climate change. Madam President, on the international level, Madam, I believe that as representative of the people, we can inform the development of national negotiation positions in protocols and other international agreements on climate change. In addition, as parliamentarians, we should aim at building political and public support for effective and meaningful implementation of the international agreements and protocols that we accede to. One very crucial role for parliamentarians is on oversight for policies, budgets, and implementation of numerous programs on climate change to bear fruit. Parliaments are supposed to and should oversee what and how governments are implementing various action plans within approved legislative and budgetary framework. It is high time, Madam President, for our parliamentarians to consider allocating substantial amount of money in each budget specifically for climate change. Such a deliberate strategy would ensure that resources are available for research and policy review as well as implementation on climate change. As I come to the conclusion, Madam President, allow me, Madam, to join fellow speakers of Parliament who have taken the floor before me to thank the Executive Committee for coming up with this topic, which is not only timely, but quite relevant at this time of the year when countries like Malawi, Mozambique, Madagascar, and many others are reeling under and grappling with the serious devastation that have been caused by climate change. Malawi therefore calls upon the delegates of the 144th General Assembly to embrace this opportunity and come up with resolutions that would assist our parliaments to mobilize resources, commitment, and zeal in dealing with climate change. Madam President and distinguished delegates, thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Now, please take a floor, Mr. Nadir from Guyana.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, first the Guyana delegation thanks you and the organizers of the IPU for the excellent facilities you have provided for us here in Bali. Madam President, climate change is like the Russian invasion of the Ukraine. We all know it's happening. However, we fail to take serious action to mitigate and stop it. Like all countries here, we are at the front line of the negative impacts of climate change. In several areas, we've had to raise our defenses sea defenses 2 feet. Water wells in our interior areas have to be dug to 100 feet, and we suffer the ravages of weather swings, the El Nino and La Nina patterns. Madam President, Guyana is making a commitment, and for us to get to zero, all of us will have to unite and be a hero. Guyana will have to pass at its parliament a resolution that will bind its government and future governments. Why? We have a democracy where governments change. And when governments change, policy changes. The one glue would be to have a resolution of Parliament. And in this regard, today, I have been heartened to hear of the resolutions from Korea and from Zimbabwe with respect to binding governments. And this is a recommendation we want to make to other countries whose parliament have not done so. Madam President, my Attorney General will be speaking later, and I now cede my remaining time to him. As the saying goes, politicians have to learn to stand up, speak up, and shut up. Thank you.
Terima kasih. Sesi pertama General Debate sudah terlaksana dengan baik. Kita akan lanjutkan General Debate pukul 14.30 WITA. Kami harapkan kepada para peserta untuk bisa hadir sebelum pukul 14.30 sehingga kita bisa secara tepat waktu melanjutkan General Debate. Dan pada pukul 17 WITA, General Debate untuk hari ini akan kita selesaikan dan beranjak ke item 2 agenda sidang, Consideration of Request for the Inclusion of an Emergency Item in the Assembly Agenda. Dengan demikian, saya tutup pleno pada sesi pertama. Terima kasih.
akal pedagang tahu dengan mencampur bahan-bahan yang ini agak-agak nuan saya tidak tahu, tetapi masa iya benar sih konon katanya ada bahan yang itu tidak patut untuk dijadikan sebagai campuran dari tahu karena hanya untuk menyiasatin tahunya. Nah, yang katanya dengan koro pedang, Pak, saya tadi udah sampaikan ya, saya senang sekali dengan semua gairah Bapak untuk memasyarakatkan ini. Problemnya ketika ini mau dinaikkan sebagai strategis nasional, tadi itu kedelai aja itu udah dihancurkan gitu. Jadi kalau mau ini dinaikkan memang saya seneng aja, itu barengan dengan kedelai yang harus kita angkat kembali sebagai komoditas pangan nasional. Tapi apakah sudah ada misalnya hasil riset soal komposisi gizi nutrisi sudah ya Pak ya? Nah itu kalau kemudian itu yang juga dicantumkan mungkin akan bagus. Kerjasama bukan hanya dengan Kementerian Pertanian. Contoh gini,